Joining us today is the 2024 Ringo Award winner for Favorite New Talent and the artist behind recent projects like DC Horror Presents, Darth Vader, Black, White, and Red, DC's Ghouls Just Wanna Have Fun, and the ongoing Incredible Hulk series with writer Phillip Kennedy Johnson. It's our absolute honor to welcome, all the way from the Emerald Isle, Danny Earls. Welcome to the Oblivion Bar Podcast.
Thanks a million, Aaron. Appreciate it, mate. Thanks for having me, Chris. I'm looking forward to a good chat, guys.
Oh, man. What an absolute pleasure does that get you finally here on the Oblivion Bar Podcast, Danny. And we'll talk about a little bit more here in just a bit about how, we all sort of first met, because I think it's really interesting to the conversation. But I think I want to start off sort of at the beginning, if I can. And I think at the beginning here, we'll talk about a quote from January 4th, 2023. And this comes from comic book writer Gail Simone. She tweeted this. She says, "Okay, dear editors at DC, Marvel, Image, Dynamite, and elsewhere, I'm about to do you a tremendous favor. At Thought Bubble, a gentleman brought me one of the most astonishing portfolios I've ever seen in 20 years of cons. His name is Danny Earls, and this guy can cook. His art was amazing, and it looks even better in person. I asked him if he would do some sample pages of sequentials so I could show them around. I just got them this morning, and holy bleep." So since then, since January 4th of 2023, it seems like, Danny, you have been on a meteoric rise in the comic book world with your covers that masterfully utilize silhouettes and visual hierarchy, or your interior work, of course, like Aaron said, over there with Phillip Kennedy Johnson at the Incredible Hulk. So, Danny, this is my long-winded way of asking you, at the beginning here, how did you decide to get into comics, and what sort of forced you to pursue this career?
It's funny you read that tweet. I actually hadn't read it for a good while. I'm paying Gail royalties, and every check I make just goes straight into Gail's bank account. It's like, thank you.
She's amazing. She like what a vouch to get. Like, Gail is just a phenomenal person.
For sure. A really quick story on that. I'll go back there, and Chris, you don't mind. But I was going to knock out Gail's table. Like, I was at Thought Bubble. I tabled with Rory Coleman. He was kind enough to let me table with him in Thought Bubble 2 years ago. And I am no one, but I was no one then, and it was like he was just kind enough, and people come up to the table. It was funny. One guy came up to my table, right, and it was like, this is pretty much just before I broke in. He was like, "Can I see your art?" And I'm like, "Yeah, mate, of course." And most people were pretty complimentary, and one guy came up and he was like, "See that art? It's not for me." And I was like, right. I was like, I gotta show this guy. So,
what a dick. Walk away.
No, listen, it's art's like, it's subjective, right? I don't mind that.
Yeah.
I had a good laugh about it. But I was gonna leave the con that day, and I was like, wasn't dejected. No, I had a great time. I was just tired, and I seen Gail's table, and I was like, "That's Gail Simone. I can't go to Gail's table. She's way too big. Who am I?" And I was like, "Do you know what? I left the convention. I left it, and I came back in, and at the door, the guy's like, 'Do you have a band?' And I took my band off, got it off the ground, rubbed it in my pocket, and I was like, 'Look, I have it. I want to go back in.' And I went back into Gail, and I went up, and I was like, "Listen," like trembling. I was like, "Would you mind taking a look?" Like, really quiet. She's like, "Speak up, I can't hear you." And then she done that, but she's like, honestly, not just that, she's so kind anyway, like just in general. But since then, behind the scenes and everything, she's been just a rock, a star. I've had so many questions for her. She's like pretty much taught me, along with other people, like the whole industry, the ins and outs of it, because it's a minefield. I didn't have a clue what I was getting into, and she's been amazing for me. But yeah, listen, sorry, going back, that was an aside. Going back to how it all started. I obviously played football. I grew up in Ireland. I loved comics and stuff growing up. But football was my absolute love, like adored it. That's all I thought about. That's all I did. And I was lucky enough to go professional in football. When I wasn't playing football, I was drawing. Do you know what I mean? But it wasn't like, if you had have asked me back then, it was football, not comics, and that's kind of, sometimes I think that might hurt people's feelings in the industry. I still adored comic books, but I love football as well. And it was weird because now it's cool. Like, you see footballers now with Marvel tattoos, and back then I had comics in my gear bag, and I was like, I can't show these, man. People are like, "What are you reading?" I'm like, "Don't worry about it."
We remember those days, Danny. We remember when it was like, when it wasn't cool to love these things. Now we have podcasts and MCU and all the things.
I was like somewhere in between. I wasn't cool either, but like I still played football. Like, when you say popular, it's like I was good footballist. People, he's cool enough, but I'm like reading comics, so I'm like in between. I always tried to like merge everyone. I was like, guys reading comic books, guys playing football, let's all come together. And then I went away to England when I was 16. Moved away, so I've been like pretty much kind of making a living since I was 16 and lucky enough to do it professionally. And I mean, my kind of thing they say is when I got comic books, I'm so lucky that I've worked hard at both things, but I'm just lucky that I found two passions. Not many people in life are lucky enough to find one. I'm just grateful that I have that, you know. So when I kind of was playing football in America, I was like, okay, I'm going to have to do something after. And I always wanted to draw. I didn't know what it was, whether it was like animation or kids' books or whatever. Then I walked into Barnes & Noble one day and found Hush, Batman Hush, and it was like I just seen the comic section of Barnes & Noble. And I always make the joke of like it's like the Bruce Almighty film where it's like, oh, like the heavens just opened up in this comic section. I was like, what is this? I'll never forget. It was like I was 20. I'm not sure what age I was. No, I was younger than that. I must have been 19. I knew comics, I read comics growing up and stuff, but I didn't know there was sections dedicated to it in shops because that's not like it is in Ireland. I literally sat there for 5 hours on the floor with a million comic books, and I was like, I cannot believe this is a thing. And from there, I just put a structure in place on how to kind of get to talk to people, get to know comics, and kind of learn the industry kind of from the bottom up, you know?
Yeah. Well, it's funny you say that. I love the inclusion of your football career because we actually had a point in our transcript, our questioning here about that football career. And actually, I want to go back and play a quick clip here. Let's go ahead and get to that. Now, do you remember that moment? Do you remember that kick that was just played?
Do you know what, mate? When you don't see the video and you play the commentary with American commentators, you don't know what sport you're watching. It's like, that's not football, man. That's right. Out of space. He's like, what is he talking about? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I do, mate. I do, actually. That's been played quite a few times. That was like in Pittsburgh. I think it was against Toronto, it might have been. One of the very few goals I scored in my career, mate. So I was lucky to get that on camera. It looks like I scored goals like that every week. I didn't.
Well, and you were, because you played defense, correct?
I played midfield mostly, mate.
Okay.
Yeah, it was defender and midfield, but mostly midfield.
Gotcha. Okay, well, Aaron, I don't know if I can speak for you here or not, but neither one of us have any knowledge on soccer or football as it's known everywhere else. Aaron, do you have something? Okay,
That's
you have
wrong.
something?
I grew up playing soccer.
Got it.
I was a defender. I played goalie. I played right wing. I played it for plenty of years.
I didn't know you were an athlete, Aaron.
You wouldn't believe me looking at me now. My shape is not conducive to a right wing player, but I was one hell of a defender or a goalie. You know, however you want to whatever you want to call it. But I you know, I'm a huge soccer fan. I don't necessarily watch or play a lot of it now simply because just, you know, military career and injuries and such. But it's so cool to hear. So I have points that I want to argue with you, but also that I appreciate that you have.
Hey, Aaron, I'm Irish. Be careful. We could be here all night, mate. I'll argue with anyone.
Fine. Let's go grab a couple of Guinnesses because I love Guinness, and we'll talk it out, man. Especially next time you're here in New York. We're gonna go out for a Guinness or two.
Definitely. Man.
But the one thing I love about, especially like society these days, is, and I think I've told Chris this before, is it used to walk through a parking lot and you'd look at the back of cars and the only thing you would see were like sports teams. You'd see football, you'd see baseball, celebrities, all that stuff. Like now you walk through a parking lot and it's like, you know, the Triforce, you see like, you know,
Doctor
stickers,
Who.
Doctor Who, you see all this nerdy shit. So it's cool to be nerdy. So, but I understand the facade of having to walk into probably a locker room with your comics stuffed in there so you don't get stuffed in a locker, you know? So I find it interesting that you have that almost, that similar yet very interesting perspective of being an athlete who reads comics, especially when we have these days, we have celebrities like I think it was Jake or Logan Paul, one of those guys walking into his boxing match with $1 million Charizard card around his neck, you know? So
amazing.
It's okay these days to be a nerd. But when you kind of like transitioned from, you know, in full-time into comics, is I guess I'm assuming now it's full-time comics. What was that feeling of kind of stepping away from? Was there a transitional time, or what was that emotion like going from athlete to? I mean, you can still be an athlete, but you know, artist.
Yeah, it's a good question, Aaron. People kind of ask that a lot. You know, to be honest with you, I don't watch a ton of football myself. I watch it like a little bit, but like I rinsed my football career. I got 15, nearly 15 years out of my career, and every day I tried as hard as I possibly could. Do you know what I mean? So if I hadn't have done that and give it me all, I would probably have a few hang-ups and thinking, I could have given more. But it was I kind of tried to coincide retiring from football and going into being not quite a full-time artist, but like enough to get me by, you know. I didn't make a ton of money in my football career, so some people kind of think that I had all this money saved up and just took time off and being an athlete. It wasn't. I was still working. I came home and worked. My sister owns a gym and I worked in the gym for the last 5 years. I'm still working it now. I work a couple hours a week still just to kind of help out and not kind of just leave her in the lurch a little bit, you know. And I love the gym. It gets me out of the studio. But going from that, I'm very like disciplined. That's kind of, I'm not, when I talk about being creative, I'm not very kind of airy-fairy with that. I don't kind of think creation hits. I'm not a genius. I'm not Alan Moore or I'm not Frank Miller, right? So what comes to me, it comes to me through discipline. So that actually helped me with my football career. So everything in football has to be super disciplined as an athlete. And I just try to transfer that over. I said, listen, I know how to train. I know how to try to get better at something. Can the same thing be applied to artwork? And I literally just done that. I kind of considered drawing and practice training. It was like, you don't get better at something unless you train it. And I literally just kind of transferred it over. So it was actually brilliant. And you might think that I'd miss football. I'm still work out kind of every day as much as I can and keep things going that way. But it really worked out great having that first career to bring me into comic books, to kind of also deal with like long days and kind of the discipline of just staying there. It's not necessarily loving things every day. I didn't love every day in my football career. You kind of have to wake up every day and say you don't love it, but the discipline is to bring you there and just make sure you do it. And then you find ways of loving it in your day. What little parts can you take from your day that you do love? You know what I mean? Like, when I say that, I love drawing comics, but it's hard work and it's long work. But I absolutely love that. There's something in me that like loves kind of sitting at a desk and kind of producing something at the end of the day and saying, okay, that day was fulfilled, you know. So I had that in my football career, and then being able to kind of deal with criticism or whatever kind of bumps in the road. Football taught me a lot to bring me into the comics career. You wouldn't kind of think that they have parallels like that, but anything to be professional or to be somewhat successful, quote unquote, whatever success is for you, you have to be disciplined, and that kind of taught me that in the comic book world, you know.
I love that approach. Is somebody similar, like as somebody similar, you know, I retired from the Army last year, and right. I've kind of, you know, had to completely change my perspective as I enter like a new phase, a new chapter of my life, and the things that I want to do, whether it's creative or just anything. Mm-hmm. So I find it awesome that kind of, you know, it's almost the same story, but just kind of, but completely different with athlete and creativity. Because you're right. You have to take that discipline and those morals and values that you've learned in your previous career, such as you for soccer, and apply it to what you do now. Do you find that those pieces of discipline that still kind of ring true in you, is it helping you with your timelines, with your, you know, your suspense dates of having to turn in, like, you know, art? Is that helpful? Yeah,
like discipline. Like, I have no innate artistic ability, like, and I mean that I'm not like, people are humble, like you might see someone like Alex Ross that like is humble or something. Like, I have none of that. I mean, like, I couldn't draw a stick figure growing up, so anything I have now is only down to discipline. And like, I mean, it's like, I kind of have like, you know, when you're younger, you say you're 19, 20, you're talking with your friends, and you have these like grandiose dreams of what you want to do when you grow up and stuff. And then you hit a certain age and it's like, okay, now the talking has to stop, right? And I have a tattoo on my arm. It's the only tattoo I have. And it says, history will separate us. And someone told me that. And it's like, what that means is like, when we're all on like our deathbed, right? It's like, you'll either have talked about doing something or you'll have done something. And like, I kind of got to a stage where it was like, right, I talked about wanting to be a comic book artist and doing this. It's like, okay, at some stage the book stops with you. You have to either do it or you don't. And when we're both lying on our deathbed, it's like, there's my work, or there's what you talked about doing. So that kind of like drives me every day, where it's like, it sounds a bit cynical. It's not, I love it more than that, but like, I adore, it's become my passion, like my obsession. Like, it's all I think about. It's all I want to do. Getting better at drawing is all I ever think about. But the discipline, it wasn't there at the start. Like, you're drawing for 2 hours a day, then you go to 4 hours, then you go to 6 hours. You have to teach yourself to do that. Like, it's not, I didn't just sit down day one and start drawing for 16 hours. You know what I mean? It's like, you have to teach yourself to get there. But in the process, along the way, you get better and you get more discipline, and it becomes more fun, because as you get better, drawing becomes more fun because you can do more things. So like, it's kind of like a snowball effect. When you get better and it becomes more fun, you want to do more of it and see how much better you can get. So it's kind of an infectious thing, and that's where the obsession comes in. And like, do I have like probably a healthy lifestyle as in anything else? No. Am I happy with that? Yeah, I'm okay. I'm doing well mentally. Like, it's good. I have a fiance. We love each other. I have a great family. I see everyone. So like, I'm happy with my life. Do you know what I mean? It's like, I work all the time, but it's not work because I absolutely adore it. It's long hours, but I don't consider it work, if that makes sense, you know?
Yeah, 100%. And not to compare podcasting to doing, you know, Batman covers for DC, but, you know, Aaron will be the first to tell you. And a little bit of context, I also was that nerd that also secretly played Pokemon and read comics on the side. Mm-hmm. You know, I played football like I played American football in high school, and it was a big part of my life. And I left that nerd in me. I left it away for a bit.
Right.
Came back to it in the Army when I met Aaron. And there is, and Danny, I'd love to get your thoughts on this. I approach the podcast like this. I approach any sort of creative venture like this, where there's a little bit of ego in me, where I'm like, come on, man, like they did this. I think you can figure out how to do this. Now do it. Right. Do you feel like that at all in your creative process?
Like, do you mean like other podcasters? You're kind of comparing yourself to other podcasters. Is that what you mean, Chris?
I mean, I would say just in quality of anything I do creatively, not just with the podcast, but I also,
it's his philosophy. He sees something that somebody else is able to do, and I can speak to this. And Chris, I'm gonna elaborate and articulate what you're trying to say.
Speak for me here, please.
He sees the quality of something, of what he's doing, and he sees somebody else or hears somebody else doing something, and he's like, ours should be that or better. And he is unstoppable when it comes to meeting that and then exceeding it.
Yeah, that's
Chris has that discipline.
But that's like, I think it's the key, right? Like you always think you're the hardest working person in the room until someone else walks in and works harder than you. You know what I mean? So like talk about like, I'm sure we'll get on to Capullo and stuff like you said, Chris. But like when I first broke in, right, I listened to an interview with Capullo and Kevin Smith, and he talked about work and how much he worked, and then I seen the quality of his work. So I like latched onto him, and it was more so for it. I love Greg's style. He's unbelievably incredible at like a comic book artist, but like more so his drive and discipline. I set my sights on that. So for me, it was when I wanted to break in, it was Greg Capullo, Jim Lee, John Paul Leon, all these people. I was like, I got to reach that. If I got to break into comics, that's where I have to reach. So like, I didn't even look around. And not in an arrogant way at all. I just didn't even take notice of people around me, because I was like, I'm not that I'm not worried about you. That's not what I mean. It was like, I'm so focused on trying to hit these guys. So like, they're at the top, right? So like, I'll never, like, those guys are Mount Rushmore. And like, that's all I'm ever trying to strive for. I'm my own biggest critic, like, at all times. I said recently to someone, it's like, I've done like over 300 pages for Marvel, and not one page have I been happy with, right? Like, right. They're the best I could have done. I poured my life and soul into them, but I still look at it and go, I can do better, right? So I love the process of drawing. That's why you have to love the process. But like, I'm always thinking I have to be better every single time. Like every piece I do, I try to work on something tiny. If it's a muscle in a neck or a leg or a rock or a texture, can I get better? And I'm always trying to compare it to the greats of the greats of the greats. So like, I agree with you, Chris. It's always like, I'm not sure technically how like kind of podcast and stuff works, but like technically those guys are like levels ahead. So it's like there's always that room to get better. Like, and when I say my own biggest critic, it's like that's the one thing in football and art it's different. Sometimes in football, where taking the likes of Mobius and Frank Miller out of this equation, right? Because they're just geniuses that are like Mike Mignola on a different level. But like in football, there's certain attributes that will hold me back. If I'm not tall enough, if I'm not quick enough, if I'm not fit enough. There's only so much you can control. Do you know what I mean? If I'm 5'10", I'm 9, but we'll say 10, right? And if I'm playing against like a Ronaldo or Didier Drogba, I can't do so much against their physique. But in I said to myself, in comic books, like the ceiling is what you want your ceiling to be. Like obviously to an extent, but like I will be as good as an artist when I die as I made myself. And I love that feeling. Sometimes that terrifies people. I'm thinking, no, let's rinse this. And like the kind of superpower is comic books are amazing. I adore them, but like I just want to be a better artist and let's just be a better storyteller all the time. So like when I hit, like I said, it sounds a bit dramatic the way I'm talking to you about deathbeds and legacy, but it's like how good can I be by the time this runs out, you know? Sure, yeah. And I sort of live my life in the way of I'm definitely not going to be the smartest person in the room when I walk in, but I can decide to be the hardest working. And that's how I always approach any of this. And since we're kind of already on the topic, Aaron, I'm going to pass the baton off to you because I'd love to hear your thoughts on the Todd Father and Mr. Greg Capullo as well.
Well, before I ask this question, there's one thing that I just want to address with you and your art style and how you keep kind of talking about yourself in like a negative light a little bit about your art. Let him be humble, Aaron. Let him be humble. I'm going to let him finish. I'm going to let him finish, but I'm going to let you finish. Let you finish. But all I want to say is this: Danny, you have it's easy to see, especially hearing because the first time you and I met, and we'll talk about this later on. Is the first time you and I met was at New York Comic Con this last year, 2024. Yeah, and Christian Ward introduced us. But before I'd even met you, I'd heard your name many times during that weekend already, and people walking around with your prints, people walking around with pages from your book, like talking about your xenomorph work, all this stuff, and I didn't even realize, to be honest, because I don't have a lot of knowledge about comic writers, artists, things like that, but I had seen your stuff before, and one of my favorite things that I had seen, you actually had drawn one of my favorite panels in like possibly 2024, and it's the DC Horrors Presents #4, where you draw the Joker in the Catwoman suit, like laying on the bed, like
that's awesome.
It's so iconic, and it's so like uniquely your style. And when you read, when people look at your art, like it's easy to see that it's your art, and it is amazing, especially going back and looking at things like Hellfire. You have such a unique style, and it's so like you have such a good variety to it. But we'll talk more about that later. I just wanted to gush over that one panel a little bit real quick.
I'm not going to send you a reference picture for that, right?
Oh God,
we'll talk offline.
I will be your best friend if you ever send me anything about that panel. If you have an original, I will buy that one.
Aaron, that means a lot. Those words mean a lot. Thank you very much.
No problem. But let's talk about what Chris was alluding to, which is you really haven't been shy at all, and we've brought it up several times in this conversation already, about you admitting that creators like Todd McFarlane, Greg Capullo have been like huge inspirations to you, and Chris and I were huge fans of obviously both of those, probably Greg Capullo, I think. But you've even posted you've posted some really awesome photos. I want to say it was New York City Comic Con 2013. Yeah. You snagged this picture with Greg Capullo, and I think it's in the foyer of the Javits Center here in New York. I kind of want to talk about that, meeting Todd, meeting Greg Capullo, and kind of the operatic scale and your use of shadow in your work. It feels similar to kind of their style, something they do very well. And are they like heavy inspirations in your artistic voice? Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, and then, or would you say that your kind of inspiration comes from different sources?
Yeah, you know what? People kind of ask me to nail down that bit, Aaron. It's a tough question for me. Like, I'm influenced by so many people, right? But like, obviously Greg is incredible, and I love Spawn and I love Todd and what they done and stuff. I don't draw anything like them. Like they're like the way they kind of drew from Image and 90s and stuff, like not Greg and Image, but like those books are incredible. But like funny enough, I didn't learn from comic books how to draw, right? Like when talking about meeting Greg and stuff, like this is like someone. Think about like me in Ireland, right? Like my family don't know nothing. No one in Ireland knows anything about comic books, and it's like this is like so. When I get so kind of giddy, and I don't hide that at all. I don't care. I tell my editors how much I love this. So people are like, you gotta hold this stuff close to your chest, and I'm like, nah, I'm drawing Batman. Like I love this. Do you know what I mean? It's like I show it, and I try. I love being enthusiastic, and I love when editors are as well. And like I try to make it come across my work and stuff, you know. So meeting Greg Capullo is like. It's weird because being in football, it was like I was kind of not grandfathered in. My dad was big in football and so was my granddad. So you know the rules of football. I didn't know anything about comic books. So to have that picture of Greg back then to meet him, my fiance came last year in 2023 to New York Comic Con. I came in, I tried to kind of play it down his table and beside Greg, and she was like, "Look who you're beside," and she doesn't know anything about comics. She just heard his name a million times. She was like, "Jesus, who is that?" So like those moments, I don't shy away. I love those moments. It's like, this is what I do it for. Like why wouldn't I get excited about that? You know, it's like, and it's not this weird thing where it's like they're on a weird pedestal. Like I just adore them and I adore their work, and I'll never kind of shy away from that. But as far as influences, I learned kind of how to draw traditionally through like the golden age of illustrators. I've done that course, like it's like a 7-folder course, right? Now like Austin Briggs and all these kind of guys, real technical artists. So that led me on to John Paul Leon. And then seeing John Paul, how John Paul can like used to like steep everything in shadows. I love that language of comic books. Like say take Mobius, right? And like his Western books like Blueberry and stuff. He's an absolute genius, but I would way prefer read or look at a John Paul Leon or Mike Mignola comic book because of the deep shadows. That's what the chiaroscuro is what I kind of fell in love with comic books for. And having the confidence to be good enough to kind of understand why to put shadows places and where that was what made me grow up. It was like, right, you want to do this, and if you see my older stuff, I kind of flirt with it and I'm like, oh, that looks cool, it doesn't look right. So to be a consummate artist in comic books, for me, it's like placing those shadows correctly and having confidence in it, big black bold strokes, like being confident in placing blacks, because if it's not right, it looks not right, you know. So it's really important for me to do that. So John Paul Leon, but then obviously those guys like Capullo do like definitely like were influences, but it was all about storytelling for me, Aaron. Funny enough, I was like, right, my artistic ability a couple of years ago wasn't where I wanted to be. It's still not. I still have so far to go. But if I'm a good storyteller, at least then I can maybe get a job in comic books and work on my craft, then work on being a draftsman and being like fundamentally good at art. But then kind of my art got somewhere where I wanted it to be. Like I said, I'm still so far away from where I do want to be. But in talking about styles, I suppose I'm not saying my style is unique, because that's very kind of an arrogant thing to say. I don't mean that, but it doesn't really look like anyone else in comics because it's not learned from comic books, if that makes sense, you know? So like I haven't kind of looked at someone, the way someone connects a shoulder to a tricep or something like that, or to a bicep. So it's kind of my own voice in that respect, but there's a ton of people that do ink washes and a ton of people that draw the way I draw. It's just kind of me picking from all these different places and then being, I suppose, confident enough in my own ability that I know the human body to be able to put it on paper how I see it, if that makes sense, you know?
Absolutely. Let me just compliment you real quick, because I want I'm going to gush a little bit just whenever I get the opportunity. You mentioned
I'm Irish,
your
I don't
shape.
do well with compliments here. I can argue I don't do well with compliments, mate.
Let me just give you one more. In your creator-owned Hellfire, there's this scene where you used I can't pronounce it, Todd. I'm not sure how to pronounce the
yeah, that's an Irish name, Tyg, yeah.
So there's a scene where he like looks around and he's like in the dark, and it's like this, you use a lot of the dark dead space around him, but there's shadow on his face. Yeah. Like your shadowing is that, and then there's a scene above the church with the skull in the cloud and the lightning storm. Like you nail shadows.
Thanks, mate.
So well, even with this book so early on. So I'm just saying, like, you're just going to keep getting better. And just to give you a compliment on the shadowing, since you mentioned that.
No, thanks, Aaron. Sorry, Chris, you were going to say something. Sorry, mate.
I was just going to build off that with the Batwing in front of the moon. I think that was the Catwoman story. Similar thing. Like, even though it's not, I guess it is kind of a shadow of the Batwing, but incredible work. Like, what a great way to showcase that without. It's basically just a cutout of, you know, the Batwing and the moon. It's great. For
sure. Thanks, mate. Yeah, I feel like that's the beauty of comic books, like learning the comic book language, and you can have things that just look cool. Do you know what I mean? Batman looks cool. Anytime you draw him, it's like, how can he look the coolest, like at all times, you know? But understanding like compositionally then how that reads, like that's what it fascinates me. Like, how can you arrange an image into something that looks pleasing to the eye without someone actually knowing why it does, you know? But like, my favorite kind of genre is horror. I love it. Like, it's just, I could draw that stuff all day, every day. So like, watching those movies growing up, and if the way I would kind of describe my work, if someone said they feel the atmosphere, that's like the biggest compliment to me, because that's my job done. That's all I want someone to feel, is like they feel like they're there, or they feel the atmosphere, everything. So like, that's all I'm ever trying to capture, really. Like anything else, like gestures and anatomy, I hopefully is correct and looks great, but the feel of something, it's like something intangible that you can't really put your finger on, like why you feel that way when you look at it. If I can capture that, that's like, and horror with all the black shadows really lends itself to that. So it's kind of understanding where to place everything and making it feel right, you know?
Mm-hmm. Well, since we're already here, let's go ahead and get into the conversation of horror, because since 2018, when Marvel launched Al Ewing's Immortal Hulk, it feels like the horror-centric status quo of the Jade Giant has just been constantly building. And what you and, you know, Phillip Kennedy Johnson, good friend of the show, Nick Klein, what you guys have done with the Age of Monsters there with Incredible Hulk is sort of in the same vein, but I found it really refreshing. And it kind of feels like every 3 to 4 issues is almost like a mini arc, which I really love. Yeah. I want to speak specifically about the Frozen Charlotte, which was your first arc in the Hulk. I actually, shameless brag, I have a page of your work from that run, and I love awesome. It. So let's start off with, how did you meet Phillip Kennedy Johnson? How did you guys first connect? And without giving too much away of sort of the overarching story, how did he pitch this run of Hulk to you in that moment?
Yeah, the first thing I want to say is, guys, like, it's super important for me. Like, that's Nick's book, right? Like Nick Klein's book. It's like he is, oh my God, like, talk about an artist. Like, mate, he is so good. It is not even funny. Like, a year before I got on that book, issue 1 came out, and I went straight to my comic book shop that day. On the Wednesday it came out, and I picked it up. I was like, this is the book that I need to read. I seen his transformation scene in the preview pages, and I'm like, this is my favorite book ever, right? And it's like, you're right what you said, Chris. It almost reminds me of Hellboy, where it's like backcountry America, like Richard Corbin's Crooked Man. It's like, it feels like that. Like, it's not like Al Ewing's it's a little bit more kind of condensed on that. But there wasn't any pitching here, Chris. I got an email from Marvel, and they were like, "Do you want to draw Hulk?" And I was like, "Yes!" In 3 seconds, I was like, "Capital yes, thank you." And then I went to New York City Comic Con, and Will Moss, the editor, came up to me and he introduced me to Phillip, and Phillip said he was a big fan of my work, and I was like, that's a bit of a thing as well, where it's like, now I'm getting more used to it when people kind of come up and say, "Oh, Danny," but then I was like, what do you mean Phillip Johnson knows me? What are you talking about? It's like, yeah, I'll work on your book, but you don't know me, you're only lying.
Stop lying, you don't know me.
Exactly. It's like, he's a good actor. Yeah. But now Phillip, like, so then to kind of like working on that book, when I say Phillip's the man, he's like a brother for life now. Like, genuinely, he is. We got along so well. Almost forget comics. Like, just like as a man, Phillip is like, he's exactly what I kind of look for in a fella, like his character and all that. He's amazing. But as a creator, for my first kind of ongoing at Marvel, Chris, it was like a dream come true. He'd ring me and say, "Hey, what do you want to draw?" And I'd be like, "Monsters looking cool." He's like, "Cool." And like he would like just run everything by me. Like he talked about New Orleans, because I used to do these cool graveyard warm-ups, and he was like, "Do your graveyard stuff." And I was like, "Oh man." Honestly, Chris, I'm not joking. It's like people talk about comics. Oh, well, I love drawing all this backwoods horror stuff. Like, I'd prefer to draw that over like cars and stuff, right? But like every book, like I know comic books you have to draw everything, but like every book was like cooler and cooler. I picked up the next 2-issue arc, and I was like, "Are you joking me? I get to draw like ancient Persia." It's like, what is going on? Like, this is the coolest gig. I wake up every day and get to draw a monster 1,000 years ago. I'm like, this is ridiculous. So like but working off of him, and like, I was super conscious to always give Nick credit, because he has built everything, and like Nick has been like phenomenal to me. He's a real good friend now as well, and we talk to each other and send each other pages, and that kind of buzz, seeing pages back and forth. The first time I sent an issue 1 for the Hulk, right, the next day Nick sent me his issue, and I was almost my editors. I was like, "Hey, can I have my issue back and spend another month on it, please?"
I need to work on it a little bit more. Just a little bit longer.
Exactly. But now it's a phenomenal kind of relationship that we built, and hopefully me and Phillip, I'm not working on the Hulk anymore. Hopefully me and Phillip are working down the line now on something else. But it was just a dream come true for 9 issues, guys. I know that sounds probably cliche, but it genuinely was. I got to draw monsters, and Hulk's one of my favorite characters, and the transformations. It was just a dream. It was a dream.
Yeah. You know, it's funny. Weird sidebar for Aaron and I here at the Oblivion Bar. Phillip Kennedy Johnson was our very first interview during episode 25.
No way.
Yeah, when we first started the show, first 25 episodes, we were starting to get into the interview game. You know, we wanted to start talking to creators. Why else would we have a reason to be able to reach out to you folks, you creative, geniuses out there, and have you on the show and talk about your process? And
that's amazing.
Obviously, as you know, Phillip Kennedy Johnson was or is still in the Army.
Yes.
And Aaron and I, we met while we were in the Army, so that was like an immediate thing. And he was about to start Alien and Superman at that time, so we wanted to get him super early on before he got a flood of interview requests and all that.
Yes.
And it's just been it's been incredible to see him sort of take on all these new characters, new story arcs, and just absolutely kill it. And to kind of build off what you were saying there, so issue 20 and 21. I want to say, did 20 just come out, or 20 just came out, correct? Last week?
21 just came out, actually, Chris. 21 just came out.
21's last issue for you?
That's my last issue of the Hulk, mate.
Bummer.
Yeah.
Bummer.
Yeah. Do you know what, mate? Like, to be honest with you, it's like bittersweet, mate. It's like I've kind of moving on now, and I have other things in the works, but mate, that book is like, it's almost like Nick keeps sending me the issues. I'm like, oh man, like I could have drawn that book for 10 years. You know what I mean? It's like, it was such a fun book. But like, listen, that's comic books and the nature of it, and it is Nick's book. I was supporting Nick on it. And how can you compete with Nick anyway? There's no point in even trying. So just do your best and just stay afloat, But I had so much fun on it. And I think we did create something, because of the kind of chemistry with us all. We created a cool little kind of run of issues there that really kind of, hopefully, I don't want to say stand the test of time, but hopefully fans like anyway,
Sure. Yeah, and this most recent arc is the that Werewolf by Night storyline, which is the Wolves of the Old World. And I want to take a step back. We sort of got on this topic a little bit, and then we moved on to the Hulk. I want to talk a little bit about like horror specifically. Horror. It feels like you've gravitated more so to the horror genre. Of course, Aaron and I spoke on it, but Hellfire, which was your first creator-owned work, it was through Don't Tell Me. It was Rogue Comics in Ireland.
That's right.
Correct?
That's right.
Yes. Which is out of print. I had to scour the dark web to find these pages, which I'm happy I did. It was awesome. But I want to ask you, sort of broadly, take us back a little bit. What is that relationship to horror like for you? Where did it start? why is it so important to you now? And is it something that you have grown into, or did you immediately love?
It's something I'm really passionate about, Chris. When I say something I love, I was terrified as a kid. I walked around terrified, maybe scared of my own shadow. I was like, what is going on here? Why, right? And I had to grow up quickly because I left home when I was 16. So I was like, right, I lived on my own quickly. And it was like, but there's something to kind of actually deconstruct all that. There's something in, I think, most Irish people's DNA, but definitely in my DNA, that innately has I don't know if it's to do with like the Catholic guilt or the church, but like Catholicism runs through Ireland and it still does. But we were like raised in that, like we were raised Catholic. I'm not anymore, but we were raised that. And like it's constantly, don't do this or you're going down there. Don't do this. It's like you were terrified, mate. And you always were kind of, there's old wives' tales. The Banshee was created in Ireland. Halloween was, when you look at all these things, then Halloween was created in Ireland. Like there's a real DNA in this country of in Celtic kind of mythology of all this stuff. And I think
you guys have some of the best lore, the best like crypto lore. It's amazing. Like some of your horror, like what do you call them? Like the old like wives' tales and the old just like legends. Like you guys have some crazy ones. I've been huge into that for years.
But it's amazing. I mean this like from the bottom of my heart. You could meet like an Irish man that's 60 and like as stoic as they come, goes to work, goes home, goes to bed, and he believes in the Banshee. Like it's kind of, it's this weird thing where it's like it has a hold on people. Like, and there's a story going up in my town. There's like about 10 minutes down the road from my house, we used to walk to school every day, and there was like this big old derelict pillar outside the house, and there was always like this Banshee. There must have been a cat or something that lived close by, but the Banshee was always like told to be sitting on this pillar. And we used to walk home from school, and as the winter comes in, it gets dark about 4 o'clock, and it'd be kind of dark, and you're thinking, I can hear that Banshee. It had to have been a cat, right? Or it was the Banshee. I don't know.
Or like, it could be the Banshee.
Exactly. But it's like those sort of things ring true with me. And then to create Hellfire, it was like I just love like the atmosphere anyway, like the kind of dark spookiness. I could have it rain 24/7 and be the happiest man on the planet. I love it. Like I love that type of weather anyway, candles and all that sort of stuff, But Hellfire, I never forget. I went down to Hook Head, is where Hellfire is based, right? It's it's a peninsula down in Wexford. It's Hook Peninsula. So my mom was from there. I've been there 3 times, and every single time it sounds like I'm being a comic book artist and creating this whole story. It's not. I used to drive over the line from Wexford to Hook, and there'd be storm clouds, and it would not be storming. I'm thinking, this is insane, like every time. And there's an old haunted house there. It's called Loftus Hall. It's like the oldest haunted house in Ireland. And I went to visit there, and there's an old kind of legend that takes place in Hellfire. That's the legend I tell in that story. So it's technically like a real horror story. Now, apparently the same story is told all around Ireland. I actually didn't know that at the time of writing Hellfire, but it's an old kind of, again, wives' tale to scare kids and stuff. But I was like, there was something just compelled me to, I was like, I have to write about this, because I felt as well there wasn't enough Irish, there's amazing writers in Ireland, like literature and young kids and all that, but like there wasn't enough horror that I was like really latching onto. It's funny because there's a lot of Irish directors now that are doing good horror films in Ireland, but I didn't feel there was enough kind of like mythology and lore that built on from our old kind of mythology, so I kind of tried to bridge that gap. And that Hellfire is like planned for 18 issues. I'm actually talking to a publisher now to kind of, I want to do that. Like that's really.
You just took the question out of my mouth. I was going to ask if we would return to it.
Thank you.
Thank
you.
Definitely. It's like
I need to know more.
At the moment, it's obviously like Big 2 work is like super important. I love those characters because I love working on them. But Hellfire is like right at the top of my list. I'm desperate to finish that. I feel like I have like it's a scary story. It involves kind of monsters. It involves witches. It involves Catholic Church. It involves Ireland. So, you know what? Whether it's compelling or not, it's compelling to me. It's something that I want to tell, and it's like it's almost like cathartic. Doing it is like gets rid of the Catholicism in me. It's like that stuff just like built up, that guilt, that shame. It's
cleansing.
Like, get that on the page. It's like, right, we're done. I showed it to my mom and be like, look, this is what you've done to us.
You did this, Mom. How dare you?
Exactly. See that monster getting his throat ripped out? That's because we were raised this way.
Yeah. Man, that's good.
But it's in my DNA. To answer it broadly, it's in my DNA, I think.
I'm really happy to hear that you're continuing that. Yeah, yes, that's awesome. That's good news.
Thanks, mate.
Same, because that was that story. Like as soon as I did not, the one thing that I was like so bummed about was like to be continued. I'm like, where's the rest? Where's the rest?
When did that come out originally? Was it 20?
It came out 5 years ago, Chris. That was the book.
Sure.
The reason I drew it and wrote it because I wanted to write that story, but I wanted to teach myself comic books, every aspect of it, like writing, drawn, editing. Like, I done the whole book myself, and I kind of wanted to. They always said, like, if you want to learn comic books, learn everyone's job, so you can be a good cog in the wheel rather than kind of a standout, you know. So I wanted to be like, okay, what does it take to make a comic book? The hardest thing, bar nothing I've ever done in my life, mate, because I hadn't a clue how to do it. Do you know what I mean? I could do it now in 30 days because it's 30 pages. Back then, mate, Jesus, it was a slog. But I'm glad I got through it. It showed that I could finish something anyway, so it was good, you know.
Quick question. Sorry, Aaron. I just had to ask this really quickly. I've always heard that the hardest job in comics is lettering. Do you find that to be true, or was it something else?
I found it fun. I'm sure as a letterer, that doesn't work with an artist maybe that like isn't kind of in sync with them, I'd say it's super hard, and they get no time, right? Like they're
Sure.
it'll last, it's so hard. But I found it really fun actually, Chris, to try figure out how to. I would redraw issue 1 actually. We're talking about the publisher. I'd actually do it in my style now, but I found that the sound effects and kind of make it the whole comic book language. Like Will Eisner's a big influence, so the way he kind of incorporates everything together, I found it really, really fun. But in saying that, I had no deadline. I done that book in like 2 years, mate. So it's like if I had a deadline, I'm sure I'd be like, I hate lettering.
I feel like that's kind of like an ass backward approach, because I feel like most artists, most creators in the comic industry don't start off with their own creator own thing, like wanting to learn all of it. Like that's something they take on later on. But I think also that speaks, pardon the pun, volumes of your dedication to the industry and to the artistry of creating comics. So I admire that dedication. So well done, because again, to even do it, it's like so well on the first go is completely insane. But we're getting ready to wrap up this conversation. Chris, you have something to say? I
thought Danny had something he wanted to say to that. Did you have anything you wanted to respond to that?
The only thing I was going to say is kind of, I don't want to speak like I'm on, like if anyone's trying to break you in, because I'm still feel like I'm still trying to kick down the door, you know. But like the biggest thing is, the editors always said, was complete something. You have to have something complete. So I drew Hellfire to show to an editor. That's essential. It was a glorified portfolio. But I also had sample pages. So I brought it to shows and was like, here's a comic book I completed. There's 30 pages, wrote it, lettered it, drew it, everything. But also, here's your characters in a sample page. And that's like, oh my God, I couldn't tell you how much that stood me in good stead with editors. They were like, this guy's serious. They took me serious, you know what I mean? It's like, and that kept the line of communication open. So if there is anyone listening that maybe is trying to break in, that I think it's the best thing you can do, and it teaches you the importance of finishing something out, because it's always at the start. I'm sure you guys are the same, maybe as a writers or artists. It's like an idea is like, oh great, and you're flying, and 30% of the way you're like, I hate this, I don't want to complete it. And then the last 10% you get that back, and it's like, oh, I'm back again. You know, so it's just about seeing something out, you know.
Yep.
And I love that you're saying this, because like I'm looking at, your Twitter right now, and you've got this Iron Giant commission on here that you posted yesterday, and it's already got like 21,000 views, 143 shares. And it's just like, he's like, oh, I don't know if I've broke into it. I don't know if I've made it, but like,
I don't know if I'm doing it right or not.
Like, you got people all over the fucking world talking about, your commissions and your portfolio and your pages. So I think there's a good sign there. But again, we're getting ready to kind of wrap up this conversation, and it's been amazing. So thank you for being here. But I have one final question for you. It's something that we like to ask the creators that come onto the show. We like to end the conversation by asking you what you've been enjoying recently, like any kind of form of media works, whether it's comics, movies, video games, any podcasts, whatever you've been loving and want to highlight. Like, let us know what it is, so we can find some inspiration as well.
I'm probably going to be your most boring guest ever, guys. I don't tend to listen to a ton of stuff when I work. I can't really, so I concentrate. And it's too late to watch them when I go home. So it's like, Jesus, I'm still trying to like finish shows from 10 years ago. But when I'd listen to Robservations, obviously Rob Liefeld's podcast, and I watched something the other day. Oh no, I didn't. I watched Iron Man 2 with my fiance who hates Superman films, superhero films. So I was like, you're sitting and watching this, and that's it.
What do you think of Whiplash?
I could keep up. Like, I wish I could keep up on everything, guys. I really do. There's just so much. I've gone so far past it where it's almost like it's overwhelming to start back again on all these things. So it's like, I don't even know where to start. But yeah, I can't listen to things when I'm working at a ton. So I'm so boring. Do you know what I mean? I sit like out to a coffee shop and people are like, hey, have you seen Netflix? And I'm like, nope. Have you seen this? No. Like, nah. Have you seen that? Nah. I'm like, nah. So have you seen Iron Man 1? Because I love that.
What's the fiance think of Mickey Rourke's Whiplash? I want my bird. I want my bird.
I want my bird.
My bird.
She
You
was,
lose.
not my word. Yeah, she was asleep after about 11 minutes, and I just watched it on my own for the rest of that.
All right, honey, just pass out.
That tracks.
Actually, do you
That
know what I
tracks.
did listen to actually when I was walking my bulldog recently? I listened to, there's a Batman podcast. I don't know what it's called.
Is it the Riddler one, or was it?
No, they done it. They done a one last year, and I'm gonna even forget the name of it. But it's about Harvey Dent and Talia al Ghul comes into it. But it's like a story
radio serial?
podcast. Yeah, it's like I can't remember what it's called. Urban something maybe. But no, that was actually phenomenal. I quite liked those things. I haven't really got into them before, audiobooks and stuff, but that was quite enjoyable hearing all the different voice actors and that. So yeah, that's again like I'm going to be the most boring man ever on a podcast for you guys. Sorry.
I think it was Batman Unburied. Is that the one you're thinking
That's
of?
it. That's exactly it. Yeah, I really enjoyed that, mate. That was amazing.
Yeah, I think it had Coleman Domingo voicing Batman, which I love.
Yes.
He's great as
Yes,
that
that's it.
voice.
That's
so
it.
yeah.
Oh man, I didn't even think about that. He's probably a great Batman.
Yep. Yeah. Well, Danny, as Aaron said, that's all we have for you here, and it's been truly a pleasure having you here on the show. And we've sort of been teasing it. We didn't really have a chance to talk about it, but I do remember getting back from New York Comic Con and sort of reflecting on that conversation that you and I had that Friday morning, and like how much of a pleasure it was to just sit there and chat. And you know, there are these conversations that you have with people sometimes where you're looking for that out to sort of like get away and you know just move on or keep the conversation flowing somewhere else. But I feel like I came over that morning to you. And I just wanted to be like, hey, Danny, huge fan of your work, and then keep it moving because I had things to do, you had things to do. But you and we sat there and chatted for 40 minutes, and it was such a pleasure. I loved it so much. So, you know, I knew as soon as I got back here to Indiana, and you know, we all kind of got back to reality. I knew that I wanted to get you here on the show as quickly as possible. And
thanks, mate.
Aaron and I have been sort of buttering you up this entire conversation, but I'm going to do it one last time here. You know, you are truly one of a kind here in the medium, and it's so easy to be a fan of yours, not only because you are so talented, but just who you are as a person. So again, if people listening right now, if you aren't getting that somehow in this conversation, just know Danny is the fucking man, and you should be supporting him in some way or another. Yeah,
Plus, he's got that Christian Ward stamp of approval.
That's right.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I just want to actually say, Chris, on that, mate. I'm not sure how much people know of your story, Chris, and I won't reveal anything if not. But when I sat and chat with you, not just because of that, you know, you told me that it's usually people's identity that is, and it wasn't. You revealed that to me like 30 minutes in. But chatting with you, pal, it was an absolute pleasure, pal. Genuinely, we got along straight away. But you're such a genuine person. You could sense that from someone, can't you? You know, and I said that to my fiance when I met you that day. She came down and I was like, just make a guy named Chris, and mate, it was genuinely such a pleasure, pal. Then we had the pleasure of getting on the live as well in New York Comic Con. You were amazing at the whatnot. So like it was honestly, pal, I mean it, like it was such a pleasure, pal. And hopefully we can meet each other like more and work together more in the future. But I'd love to just stay friends anyway, pal. That's the least I can ask for, and the same to you as well, Aaron. You know,
you're not getting rid of us for sure. You've already came onto the show.
I regret
now we're
saying
all
that,
friends.
right? Yeah.
Well, before we let you go, is there anything that you want to showcase to listeners? How can they follow you, your career, and all those things? How can they look out for you?
Yeah, just everything, pretty much all across my social media. It's Danny Earls 16 once. That's my soccer number, so I'm trying to keep that going over.
Mine's the same. It's C Hacker 41. I do the same thing.
Yeah, there you go, exactly. But as far as work, there's not a ton I can talk about right now, guys. I have loads of covers that'll be coming out kind of periodically now over the next couple of weeks, but interior wise I can't talk about a lot. I'm heading to a big one is I'm heading to MegaCon. I'm not sure when this is coming out, but I'm heading to MegaCon to start of next week. If anyone's there, give me a shout if this is later than this. If you said hello, thanks. But yeah, no, that's kind of it, guys. I'll be hitting a few more commissions. But Daniel 16, that's pretty much it until my interiors I can announce stuff.
Nice. How long's the flight for you?
It's 7
Orlando?
hours to Boston and then 3.5 down to Florida. It's not so bad, you know. You can flights nowadays, mate. It's like a glorified hotel. You get your dinner, you get your movie. You know what I mean? You just go to sleep when you want to. So I calculated recently in my football career, I've taken pretty much nearly 1,000 flights. So that's second nature now, mate. I just go to sleep. I can sleep on command these days, which is good.
Nice. I think it was Aaron. I think it was Louis C.K. He said, on flights now, you just watch a shitty Adam Sandler movie and take a runny dump, and you're there. That's essentially. That's all you do. That's all you do on long flights.
So true. I watched too many bad Adam Sandler films.
Well, on that note, Danny, again, such a pleasure. Can't wait to have you back on the show here in the future, and we'll talk to you soon.
Real pleasure, guys. Thanks a million for having me.